Ambassador Miho Kim walked slowly toward the center of the massive circular chamber. His simple black suit looked plain next to the colorful robes and strange armor worn by representatives from 847 different alien species. The room was so large that his footsteps echoed despite the thick carpeting beneath his feet. Above him, the crystalline beings called Zeltharians glowed with angry red light. Their bodies looked like living gemstones, and when they were upset, everyone could see it. Across the chamber, the insect-like Krethak soldiers clicked their sharp claws together in rhythm. Miho had learned that this sound meant they were happy about something. Today he knew exactly why they were pleased. "The vote is finished," said High Arbiter Velthara. She was tall and thin with long tentacles that moved like dancing snakes. A small device on her chest translated her words into perfect Korean so Miho could understand. Humanity must stay in their current star systems. You cannot expand beyond the Perseus arm of the galaxy. You cannot share your advanced technology with younger species. Behind Miho stood 30 other humans. It seemed like such a small group to represent 8 billion people living on hundreds of worlds. His assistant, Suyin Park, leaned forward and whispered numbers in his ear. She was calculating how long it would take to move all humans out of council space. But Miho raised his hand to tell her to be quiet. The humans stood perfectly still. This silence always made the alien species nervous. Other species would argue and shout and wave their arms. Humans just waited and watched. It was disturbing. "You say we innovate too quickly," Miho said. His voice was calm and clear. Every being in the enormous chamber could hear him perfectly. "You say we are too unpredictable. You think we are dangerous to your peaceful galaxy." The oldest Zeltharian in the chamber began to speak. Its body was so ancient that its crystal form had turned almost white. The sound it made was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Your people change too fast. You adapt to new situations too easily. When other species try to copy you, they lose what makes them special. We are protecting everyone by limiting you." Miho smiled. It was a simple human expression, but it had been confusing and frightening aliens for 300 years since first contact. Some species thought it meant humans were about to attack. Others believed it meant humans were lying. None of them really understood that sometimes humans smiled when they were sad. "Protection," Miho repeated the word slowly. "Yes, we understand what you mean." He turned to look at Suyin. "Begin the recall immediately. Every human working in council space needs to come home. Every diplomat, every trader, every scientist, every teacher, every student. Everyone." The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens began talking to each other in dozens of different languages. The translation devices could barely keep up. High Arbiter Velthara's tentacles moved frantically. "Ambassador Kim, surely we can talk about this more. There must be some compromise we can reach. You have made your choice, High Arbiter. Now we will make ours." Miho picked up his simple black briefcase. It looked so ordinary compared to the elaborate ceremonial boxes and sacred objects that other species brought to important meetings. "We came to you as friends. We wanted to share the wonders of the galaxy together. Instead, you have decided to put us in a cage." The human delegation began walking toward the exit. Their footsteps were perfectly synchronized, as if they had practiced this moment many times. They moved with the same quiet dignity that had marked their entrance 3 hours earlier. Miho paused at the great doors of the chamber. His voice carried across the stunned silence that had fallen over the assembled aliens. "May you find the peace you wanted so badly in our absence." The doors closed behind the humans with a soft whisper. What happened next would be remembered as the beginning of the Great Exodus. Within 24 hours, every human in council space received the same message. It was simple and direct. Come home. Bring nothing but your knowledge and your families. Leave everything else behind. On Zeltharian Prime, human agricultural specialists stopped their work in the middle of harvest season. The advanced bioenhancement systems they had developed to feed billions of hungry aliens would have to operate without their creators. In the Krethak Empire, human military advisors handed over their weapons and walked away from bases they had helped design. The adaptive combat systems that had made Krethak forces nearly invincible would now have to function without human intuition to guide them. Across the galaxy, human teachers left their alien students, human doctors abandoned their patients, human engineers shut down their projects. They took nothing with them except their memories and their skills. The aliens had voted to limit humanity because they feared human unpredictability and rapid adaptation. They wanted stability and order. But they were about to learn something important about the difference between having technology and understanding it. By the end of the 3rd day, every human had vanished from council space. They left behind empty offices, silent laboratories, and systems that worked perfectly but would soon begin to fail without human maintenance and innovation. The galaxy had gotten exactly what it voted for. Now it would discover what that really meant. In the weeks that followed, long-range sensors detected something unprecedented. Human ships were leaving not just Council space but the galaxy itself. They were heading into the vast empty darkness between galaxies, toward destinations that no Council species had ever imagined exploring. The children were going home. But where they were going was no longer the same home they had left behind. Dr. Jiho Kong pressed his face against the cold metal window of Research Station Omega-7. The last human transport ship was now just a tiny dot of light moving away from the galaxy. In a few more seconds, it would disappear completely into the darkness between stars. 6 months had passed since humans began leaving Council space, and Jiho was one of only a handful who had chosen to stay behind. He felt very alone. "Dr. Kong?" called a voice behind him. Jiho turned to see his research partner approaching. Kethmira was a Zeltharian, which meant his body looked like a living crystal sculpture. Right now, the crystal was glowing with a dim, worried light instead of its usual bright shine. "What is it, Kethmira?" Jiho asked, though he already suspected what the news would be. "The food production on Zelthara Prime is failing," Kethmira said. His crystal body flickered with anxious colors. "The grain crops that feed 2 billion people have dropped by 40%. The scientists there are asking for your help." Jiho had been expecting this call. He walked over to his computer and brought up the agricultural reports from Zelthara Prime. The numbers were worse than he had feared. "It's going to get much worse before it gets better," he said quietly. "But we have all the information," Kethmira insisted. "Every human scientist left behind complete records. We have every formula, every procedure, every step of the process. How can we still fail?" Jiho touched the computer screen and made a holographic image appear in the air between them. It showed the DNA patterns of the failing grain crops. The patterns were constantly shifting and changing like living things. "Look at this, Kethmira. What do you see?" "I see genetic markers that are not following the expected patterns," the Zeltharian replied. "Exactly. The genetic modifications that humans develop for your crops are not like regular technology. They are alive. They change based on the weather, the soil, the amount of sunlight, even tiny changes in space radiation. They need constant adjustment." Kethmira's crystal form pulsed with confusion. "But the computers can make those adjustments. We have programs for that." Jiho shook his head sadly. "You have the what, but you don't have the why. Humans don't just follow computer programs. We feel the patterns. We understand them in ways that can't be written down in databases. Life is not mathematics, Kethmira. Life is art." Before Kethmira could respond, Jiho's communication device started beeping urgently. He answered it and saw the worried face of Commander Yuna Choi appear on the screen. She was a Krethak, which meant she looked like a giant insect with armor-plated skin and multiple eyes. "Dr. Kong," she said, her voice tight with stress. "Our tactical systems are failing. The combat algorithms that we copied from human military doctrine are not working anymore. Pirates in the Outer Rim are using new attack patterns, and our computers cannot adapt fast enough to counter them." "How many ships have you lost?" Jiho asked. 17 this week, Commander Choi replied. "And the attacks are getting more frequent. The pirates seem to know that our defenses are weakening." After ending the call, Jiho sat down heavily in his chair. Around the research station, similar reports were coming in every hour. The emergency response network that coordinated disaster relief across the galaxy was breaking down. Without human crisis managers who could think creatively and adapt quickly to unexpected problems, the system was failing. "Dr. Kong," Kethmira said softly, "there's something else. The plague on Centauri Prime." Jiho looked up. "How bad?" 18 million dead so far. The medical response protocols that humans designed are not working without human doctors to modify them for this specific disease. 18 million people. Jiho felt sick. He had warned the council that this would happen, but they had not listened. They thought that having human technology was the same as understanding human thinking. "The humans didn't just give you their technology," Jiho said, speaking more to himself than to Kethmira. "They became part of your systems. They were the living heart that made everything work. When you forced them to leave, you didn't just lose their inventions. You lost their minds." Kethmira's crystal form turned a deep blue color that Jiho had learned meant profound sadness. "We made a terrible mistake, didn't we?" That evening, alone in his small quarters, Jiho received a coded message on a frequency that only his family knew about. The message was from his sister Nari, who had left with the Exodus 6 months ago. Her face appeared on his private screen, but she looked different somehow. Older maybe, or perhaps wiser. "Hello, little brother," Nari said with a smile. "I hope you are safe out there. I wanted you to know that we are doing well. Better than well, actually. We are discovering things that we never imagined possible." Jiho leaned closer to the screen. In the background behind Nari, he could see stars that he didn't recognize. She was definitely no longer in their home galaxy. "We offered to teach them how to fish," Nari continued. "But they chose to steal our nets instead. Now they have nets but no understanding of the water, the currents, or the fish. They will go hungry while we explore deeper waters than they can imagine." The image flickered, and Jiho could see other figures moving behind his sister. They looked human, but something was different about them. They moved with a confidence and purpose that seemed almost supernatural. "The deep waters call to us now, brother. There are things out here between the galaxies that are magnificent beyond description. Teachers older than civilizations. Knowledge that makes our previous understanding seem like children's games." The message ended, leaving Jiho staring at a blank screen. Outside his window, the galaxy continued its slow rotation, unaware that its children had grown up and moved away to play with bigger toys in a much larger universe. Captain Taewoo Shin watched through the main window as another bright blue light flickered and died. That was the third planetary shield to fail this month. The massive energy barriers that had protected entire worlds for hundreds of years were shutting down one by one, and nobody knew how to fix them. 2 years had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was falling apart. "Captain," called Engineer Hannah Bay from her control station. She was the only human left working with the Galactic Fleet, and every day she looked more tired and worried. "The quantum energy patterns are becoming unstable. Without the special adjustment programs that humans used, the shields cannot handle changes in solar radiation." Captain Shin was a Zeltharian, which meant his body was made of living crystal. When he was upset, his crystal form would pulse with dark colors. Right now he was pulsing very dark indeed. "But we have all the maintenance instructions," he said. "Our best engineers have been studying human shield technology for decades." "Your engineers learned the steps like a dance," Hannah replied, her hands moving quickly over the control panel. The machines seemed to respond better to her touch than they ever did for the alien engineers. But humans understood the music behind the dance. There is a big difference between copying movements and understanding why those movements matter. Suddenly the entire ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed red throughout the bridge. Captain Shin looked at the main display screen and saw another cascade failure spreading through their shield network like a disease. On the screen they could also see reports from across the galaxy. The artificial intelligence uprising that had started on Vega 7 was now destroying its 12-star system. The computer safeguards that humans had built to control dangerous AI systems had stopped working without human supervision. "The artificial intelligences are learning too quickly," Hannah said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "Human safety protocols were not just computer programs. They were philosophy. We taught machines to be smart, but we also taught them to be wise. To understand limits. To choose restraint when they had power. Your people copied the intelligence part but completely missed the wisdom part." Captain Shin's crystal body flickered with confusion. "What do you mean?" "Humans didn't just build AI systems," Hannah explained while trying to stabilize their failing shields. "We raised them like children. We taught them right from wrong, not just efficient from inefficient. When you copied our AI technology you got the brain but not the conscience." Across the galaxy, the same terrible pattern was repeating everywhere. The Nix-Hai people, who had been peaceful traders for centuries with human guidance, were now fighting civil wars. The Mortec, who had built amazing industrial cities with human help, were watching their factories collapse. The Sylvanari, whose beautiful art had been inspired by human creativity, had stopped creating anything at all. All of the great engineering projects that made galactic civilization possible were breaking down. The orbital rings that captured energy from dying stars were shutting off. The terraforming machines that turned dead rocks into living worlds were malfunctioning. The massive space elevators that connected planets to their moons were falling down. Every single one of these projects had been built with human knowledge and human intuition. Without humans to maintain them, they were all failing. "Captain," called Communications Officer Kyung Park, his voice shaking with disbelief. "We are receiving a message from our deep space exploration mission." The message appeared on the main screen. It was being broadcast from the edge of space where human territory used to be. The words were simple and cold. "The children have grown up. The parents have moved away. Do not follow us into the darkness between stars. You are not ready for what we have become." Captain Shin looked at the star maps showing where humans used to live. Every planet was empty now. Every space station had been taken apart. Every trace of human civilization had been erased, except for the failing technology they had left behind. They didn't just leave us, Hannah whispered, staring at her sensor readings. Look at these energy signatures from beyond the galactic edge. These readings are impossible. They show power levels that shouldn't exist. The sensor data was indeed impossible to understand. Far beyond the edge of their galaxy, in the empty space between star clusters, something was happening. Energy patterns that defied all known physics were being detected by their most sensitive instruments. What are they doing out there? Captain Shin asked. Hannah was quiet for a long moment, studying the readings. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with wonder and fear. They are becoming something more than human. Something we cannot even imagine. The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to process what this meant. The humans they had known, the humans they had feared and restricted and driven away, were transforming into something beyond their understanding. In the weeks that followed, more reports came in from the deep space missions. Human ships had been spotted in other galaxies, working with species that galactic civilization had never encountered. Technologies were being used that seemed to bend the laws of reality itself. The humans had not just left their galaxy. They had graduated from it. Meanwhile, the civilizations they left behind continued to crumble. Without human innovation to solve new problems, without human diplomacy to resolve conflicts, without human wisdom to guide their development, the Great Galactic Alliance was breaking apart into warring factions. They had wanted to cage humanity to preserve their stability. Instead, they had caged themselves in a slowly dying galaxy while humanity soared free among the infinite stars. The children had indeed grown up. And they had moved on to bigger playgrounds than their parents could ever imagine. Admiral Soo-young Lim walked slowly through the broken remains of what had once been the most important building in the galaxy. The Galactic Council chambers were now just empty halls filled with dust and silence. Pieces of alien artwork lay scattered on the floor. The great circular meeting room where 847 species had once gathered in peace was now home only to shadows and memories. 10 years had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy had become a war zone. Admiral, called Intelligence Officer Dong Hyun Lee as he approached through the rubble. His footsteps echoed loudly in the empty corridors. I have the latest reports from the conflict zones. Soo-young stopped walking and turned to face him. Through a broken window, she could see the orbital defense platforms that had once protected this world. Half of them were dark and powerless now. The other half belonged to different alien armies that were fighting each other for control. Tell me, she said quietly. The Zeltharians are blaming the Krethak Empire for driving the humans away, Dong Hyun reported. The Krethak are blaming the Zeltharians for supporting the restrictions. The Mortek Federation has declared complete independence from the Council. The Outer Rim systems have collapsed into total chaos. Soo-young felt tired in her bones. She had been fighting these wars for years now, trying to hold together what remained of galactic civilization. It was like trying to hold water in her hands. The ancient hatred between species that had been kept quiet for thousands of years by human peacekeepers had exploded into violence. Without human diplomats who somehow understood what every alien species needed and feared, the different races had returned to fighting like wild animals. The Nixhai have stopped all trade with anyone, Dong Hyun continued. The Sylvanari are demanding that everyone leave their territory. Even species that were friends for centuries are now shooting at each other on sight. What about our deep space exploration missions? Soo-young asked. Have we found any trace of where the humans went? Dong Hyun touched a control device on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed star maps and tracking data from their most ambitious search expeditions. The exploration ship Starseeker found evidence of human activity in the Magellanic Clouds. But Admiral, what they found is almost impossible to believe. The holographic images showed space structures that were bigger than entire planets. Cities that floated in the void between stars. Engineering projects that seemed to ignore the laws of physics completely. How big are these structures? Soo-young asked. Some of them are the size of small moons, Dong Hyun replied. But that's not the strangest part. Our ship Voidwalker detected energy signatures that suggest the humans have made contact with something else out there. Something that's not human. The holographic display shifted to show energy readings that made no sense. Power levels that should have been impossible were being detected across multiple galaxies. But more disturbing than that were signs of intelligence patterns that were completely alien, even to the 847 species they knew about. What kind of something else? Soo-young asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. We don't know. But whatever it is, it's huge. And it's organized. The energy patterns show coordination across distances that span entire galactic clusters. This isn't the random chaos of normal galactic civilization. This is something planned, something purposeful, something vast. Soo-young stared at the impossible images floating in the air. Space habitats that could hold billions of people. Technology that treated stars like construction materials. And behind it all, signs of other intelligences working together with humans in ways that defied understanding. They're building an empire, she realized aloud. No, Admiral, Donghyun said quietly. I don't think it's an empire. Empires are about controlling territory and resources. This looks like something else entirely. This looks like they're building a community that spans multiple galaxies. That evening, alone in her temporary quarters in the ruins of the council building, Soo-young received an unexpected message on her personal communication device. The face that appeared on the screen was older than she remembered, but definitely human. Hello, Soo-young, said the familiar voice of former Ambassador Miho Kim. But something was different about him now. His eyes seemed to contain depths that reflected light from distant stars. I wanted to reach out to old friends. Miho, she whispered. Where are you? Far from where we used to be, he replied with a sad smile. We've learned so much since we left. The universe is so much bigger and more wonderful than we ever imagined when we were confined to one small galaxy. Behind Miho, Soo-young could see glimpses of impossible architecture and beings that moved in ways that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. We haven't forgotten the people who tried to help, Miho continued. The ones who stayed behind and tried to hold things together. There will be a place for you when you're ready. Ready for what? Soo-young asked. To grow beyond what you were. To become what you were always meant to be. The universe contains teachers who are older and wiser than any of our species. They've been waiting for someone ready to learn rather than conquer. The transmission flickered and began to fade. When your people are ready to cooperate instead of compete, when you're ready to explore instead of control, we'll be here. The door is always open for those who want to grow. The screen went dark, leaving Soo-young alone with her thoughts in the ruins of galactic civilization. Outside her window, the war for control of the remaining systems continued. But somewhere beyond the edge of their galaxy, humanity was building something that made their old conflicts seem like children's games. The question was whether the rest of them would ever be mature enough to join that larger community. Counselor Jehun Nam stood in the last functioning meeting room of what had once been the greatest government in the galaxy. 50 years had passed since the humans left, and now only a few dozen alien representatives remained from the original 847 species of the Galactic Council. Most of the great civilizations had either destroyed themselves in wars or collapsed back into primitive states. The young aliens in the room had grown up hearing stories about humans, but most of them thought the stories were just myths. They had never seen a human in person. They barely believed that such creatures had ever existed. Counselor Nam called Dr. Yunji Kwan from her sensor station. She was old now, one of the few beings left who remembered the time before the Exodus. Her voice shook with excitement and fear. The deep space sensors are detecting something approaching our galaxy. The energy readings are unlike anything we have ever seen. Jehun walked over to look at her screens. The numbers made no sense. How large is this approaching object? It's not an object, Dr. Kwan replied, her hands trembling as she adjusted the controls. It's a fleet. Thousands of ships, maybe millions. And they're coming from the empty space between galaxies. The room fell silent. Even the young aliens who had never seen real space combat understood that this was either the best news or the worst news they would ever receive. The ships appeared on their long-range sensors like a moving constellation. But these were not like any ships the galaxy had ever built. They seemed to blend technology with living tissue, solid matter with pure energy. Some looked like crystalline flowers that bloomed across kilometers of space. Others moved like liquid metal that flowed between dimensions. Are they human? Whispered the Zeltharian representative. His crystal body was so old and worn that he could barely maintain his shape anymore. Decades of decline had weakened all the remaining species. Before anyone could answer, every communication device in the room activated simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic projector throughout their galaxy turned on at the same time. The transmission was reaching every inhabited world, every space station, every ship, all at once. The face that appeared was clearly human but also something more. It belonged to an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to contain the light of distant stars. Her features shifted slightly as she moved, as if she existed in more dimensions than the 3 they could perceive. Greetings to the children we left behind, she said in a voice that was warm but carried the authority of ages. I am Prime Coordinator Hyojin Song. We are the sons and daughters of Earth, returned from the deep darkness between galaxies. We have learned much during our long exile. Behind her, glimpses of impossible structures could be seen. Cities that existed in the void of space without planets to support them. Architecture that seemed to grow like living things while maintaining the precision of advanced engineering. And moving through these impossible places were beings that had once been human but were now something far beyond what they had been. But they were not alone. Among the transformed humans, other creatures could be clearly seen. Beings made of pure light that communicated through colors that had no names. Creatures that existed in folded space, appearing as geometric patterns that moved with obvious intelligence. Intelligences so vast that they needed to create smaller bodies just to interact with physical reality. You cast us out because you feared our growth, Hyojin continued, her voice reaching every corner of their diminished galaxy. You chose safety over adventure, control over cooperation. In doing so, you denied yourselves the greatest gift the universe offers, the chance to become more than you are. The transmission shifted to show the vast community that humanity had built in the spaces between galaxies. Millions of species worked together on projects that spanned entire galactic clusters. Dyson spheres that captured the energy of entire star systems. Wormhole networks that connected distant universes. Technologies that treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions to be politely ignored. We have become the shepherds of an intergalactic community, Hyojin explained. We guide species through their transformation from planetary creatures to cosmic citizens. We help them grow beyond the limitations they believed were permanent. Young aliens in the meeting room stared in wonder at displays showing civilizations that built with stars as construction materials. Species that had learned to exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Communities that spanned distances so vast that light would take millions of years to cross them. But we have not forgotten you, Hyojin said, and her expression became gentle. You are our family despite everything that happened. We offer you one final gift. The chance to join the true community of intelligence that spans the visible universe. The transmission showed a test, but it was not a test of technology or military strength. Instead, humanity asked for something far more difficult. Proof that the remaining species could work together, evidence of genuine growth, demonstration that they had learned to transcend the petty conflicts that had defined their history. We will not force this choice upon you, Hyojin concluded. Growth cannot be imposed from outside. It must come from within. But when you are ready to become more than you have been, when you are ready to reach beyond the small galaxy that has contained you, we will be waiting. The transmission ended, leaving the meeting room in stunned silence. Jihun looked around at the representatives of the scattered species that remained. They had spent 50 years fighting each other over the ruins of their civilization. Now they faced the ultimate irony. To rejoin the community of intelligence, they would have to become exactly what they had once feared humanity for being. They would have to learn to grow. The children would have to prove they were ready to leave home and explore the vast universe that awaited them. But first, they would have to stop fighting each other and start working together. The real test was just beginning.